On October 9th, 1974, Oskar Schindler passed away in Hildesheim, Germany. 19 years later, the film Schindler's List, portraying his efforts to save over 1,000 Jews from the Holocaust, was released. Considered one of the greatest movies of all time, it paid special attention to the character of Schindler and the importance of his actions. However, even Spielberg had to condense some of the history to fit a linear story and runtime. But to what extent? How accurate is Schindler's List? The early scenes of the movie follow a commonality of historic epics in taking several true events that occurred over a long period of time and shortening it for storytelling purposes. The first real deviation coming when Schindler approaches Isaac Stern for help in acquiring and managing an enamelware factory in Krakow, Poland. Stern in the film is actually a composite of a few real-life characters, including Stern, factory manager Abraham Bankier, Goth's secretary Mitek Pemper, and to a lesser extent Poldek Pfefferberg, who is also a character in the film. And mostly glossed over in the film is when Stern mentions the higher cost of Polish workers over Jews to Schindler. Schindler actually employed a fair number of Poles, especially in the early days, though most of his workers were usually Jews. During this time, Schindler spent huge amounts of money bribing Nazi soldiers and officials for various favors, and his factory became known as a safe place for Jews away from violence. Shortly after comes the arrival of Amon Goth, the Nazi officer in charge of the construction and management of the Plaszow concentration camp. The real Goth was every bit as horrendous as he is in the film. If anything, the film lessens the amount of his crimes. It shows him murdering Jews even for the slightest offense, which is true, but he would also kill prisoners at random for no reason at all, and at a shocking frequency, to the point that one camp survivor said he would not eat breakfast until he had killed at least one Jew. The scene depicting the liquidation of the Krakow ghetto is maybe one of the most dreadful of the movie, and it was witnessed by Schindler personally and marked his turning point, both in the film and in history. Schindler realized by the blatant nature of the Nazis' actions that the horrors he had heard of elsewhere were not isolated incidences, but were approved by the high command. However, left out of the film was that Schindler had some idea of what was going to happen, as he had made sure his workers stayed at his factory overnight to avoid the havoc. At this point, Schindler began to shift his focus from business to saving the residents of the camp, and also around this time, his bribes and favors started costing more than his factory was making, and he began slowly losing money. As the war began to turn against Germany, Goth informed Schindler that the camp was being closed down and the prisoners to be moved elsewhere. In response, Schindler and Stern wrote the famous list in order to buy the lives of Schindler's workers from Goth. While there was a list compiled, actually 3 of them, the film inflates the importance of the physical paper list, when it was actually the many bribes and gifts to Goth and others that secured the workers' freedom. Also left out of the film is that by the time the camp closed, Goth wasn't even in command anymore, being removed for violating numerous camp regulations and for the theft of Jewish property, or more specifically, failure to turn over that property to the German state. While en route to Schindler's new factory in Brunlitz, a trainload of around 300 of his female workers were accidentally sent to Auschwitz, where Schindler's normal connections did not work, and not him, but his secretary had to personally bribe the camp commander with diamonds and other black market goods to get them out. And during this time, Schindler also arranged for as many as 3,000 other Jewish women from Auschwitz to be sent to textile factories to help save them from the gas chambers. The new factory made anti-tank grenades, but due largely to the health of his workers, Schindler's factory produced next to nothing in usable products, and to hide this, Schindler bought finished goods on the black market and resold them as his own at a loss. This is when Schindler really started to lose money. He spent most of his time in Krakow buying food and other supplies for his workers, while his wife cared for the workers in Brunlitz. By far, the most changed character of the film is Schindler's wife Emily, who in the film is shown as almost a completely uninvolved bystander, though a supportive one. She falls very short of a real hands-on involvement. It is hard to say with certainty due to the secret nature of their actions, But we know Emily spent much more time with the Jewish workers than she did in the film. She ran a makeshift hospital for the sick workers and even sold her own jewelry on the black market to pay for extra medicine and food, and was overall far more involved and active than her film counterpart. On May 7th, 1945, Schindler and his workers gathered on the factory floor to listen to Winston Churchill announce Germany's surrender. The movie more or less represents what happened afterward. The speech to the workers and the SS Guard and the gold ring made from a worker's fillings are all true. Being a Nazi Party member, Schindler and Emily were forced to flee to Switzerland, totally destitute. Schindler once estimated that he had spent over $1 million saving Jewish lives. Schindler's List is a little different from other historic epics, as director Steven Spielberg treated the film as a documentary rather than a movie, and as such presented what was on screen as fact. And for the most part, it is. The real inaccuracies come from what was not on screen. And you may have noticed we didn't mention a lot of the more gruesome details, as we didn't think they needed to be reiterated. But what did you think? What else did we not include that you think we should have? Let us know in the comments below. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and let us know what movie to take a look at next. Thanks for watching.